Good morning, everyone. So today is Thursday, so Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. But before we start, let's do some prayers. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Tat Savitra Varenayam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Diyo Yo Nah Prachodayat, Asto Ma Satgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, Mrityorma Mritam Gamya. Om Sahnavavatu Sahnabhunaktu Sahviryam Karvavahi Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahi. Om Shanti 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 Om. So let's open our Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, page number 179. So last 3 verses in this section, and which is a chapter 2, end of chapter 2, there are a lot of names of these rishis. And rishis who taught the disciples, then those disciples became the teachers. So it's just like a continuation of the teachers and the disciples mentioned in this section. At Vanshaha. Vansh is like a Vansh means a family also. Vansh means a line of the teachers also. Vansh. Okay. At Vanshaha. So that means this is the line of the teachers. Poti Mashyaho Gopanath Gopavanaha Potim Ashyat Potim Ashyaho Gopanath Gopavanaha Koshikat Koshikaha Kundyanat Kundyaneha Shandilyat Shandilya Koshikach Cha Gotam Cha Gotamaha. So now the line of teachers, Patumasye received this knowledge from Gopavannaha. Gopavannaha from another Potimashya. Another means there must be another rishi with the same name. This Potimashya from another Gopavanna. This Gopavanna from Kaushika. Kaushika from Kandinya. Kandinya from Shandilya. And Shandilya from Kaushika and Gautama. Some of the names I'm sure you are familiar with, but there are some new names. I mean, you can see that how old this line of teachers and the disciples have been. So let's look at verse number 2 over there also, just the names. Agni Veshyat, Agni Veshyaha, Shandilya cha, Anabhi Latascha, Anabhi Malat, An Bhimlatat, An Bhimlat, An Bhimlatat, An Bhilatoho Gotamat, Gotamaha, Sa Etav Prachin Yogyabhyam, Sa Et Prachin Yogyo Prasharyat, Prasharyo Bhardwajat, Bhardwajo Bhardwaj cha Gotmach, Gotmoho Bhardwajat, Bhardwaja Parasharyat, Parasharyo Vajvapayanat, Vajpayanaha Koshikayane, Koshikayane. So from Agni Veshya from Shandilya, and Anabhi Malata from another Anabhi Malata, this Anabhi Malata from a third Anabhi Malata, this Anibhalata from Gautam from Shatav, and Prachinya Yogya Satav, and Prachinya Yogya from Prasharya from Bhardwaj from another Bhardwaj, and Gautam from another Bhardwaj, this Bhardwaj from another Prasharya, this Prasharya from Bhardwaj Pyana, Bhai Juwan Pyana from Koshikiane, Koshikiane. So again, some of the names I'm sure you're familiar with. They became little more popular. But a lot of names, we have never heard these before. But they have spent enough years to learn this and meditated upon it and taught it to their students also. What a lineage. And then one more long mantra, mantra number 3 in this section. घृत कोशिकात घृत कोशिकाः प्राशर्यनात् पाराशर्यानाः पाराशर्यात् पाराशर्यो जातु कर्मण्यात् जातु करने हैं आसुराय नाच यासकाच आसुराय न स्त्रवने हैं त्रैवर्णे रोप्य जंधने ओपजंध निरासुरे आसुरी भारद्वाजात भारद्वाज आत्रेयात आत्रेयो मानते मानते गौतमात गौतमो गौतमात गौतमो वातस्यात वातस्या शांडिल्यात शांडिल्या केशो काप्यात कैश्वर्यः काप्या कुमार हरितात कुमार हरितातो गालवात गालवो विदर्भी कौंडिन्यात विदर्भी कौंडिन्यो वत्सन पातो वाभ्रवात वत्सन पाडवा भ्रवा पथा सोभरात पंथा सोभरो अयास्यात आंगिरसान अयास्य आंगिरसा अभूते त्वश्रात अभूति स्त्रवष्ट्रोः विंध विश्वरूपात्व श्रात विश्वरूप त्वाश्रो अश्विभ्याम अश्विनो दधीच आर्यवर्णात दंड्यके आर्वनो अथर्वनो देवात अथर्वा देवो मृत्यो प्रांधस्वनात् मृत्यु प्रांधवस्वनः प्रांधवस्वनात् प्रध्वंसन एक ऋषेः एक ऋषि विप्रचितेः विपचरिते चित्रविष्टेः विष्टिः सनारोः सनारुः सनातनात् सनातना सनगात सनगः परम इष्टिनः परमेष्टि ब्राह्मणा ब्रह्म स्वयंभू ब्रह्मणे नमः इति षष्ठम ब्राह्मणम. So again, so many names of these rishis from Garishtamishkah, from Prasharyanaha, Prasharyana from Prasharya, Prasharya from Jatu karne hai, Jatu karne from Asurayana and Yaksha, Asurayana from Trevani, Trevani from Apujanthani, Apujanthani from Asuri, Asuri from Bhardwaj, Bhardwaj from Athreya, Athreya from Mantihi, Manti from Gautam, Gautam from another Gautam. This Gautam from Vatsya, Vatsya from Shandilya, Shandilya from Kashore, Kapya, Kashorva Kapya from Kumar Haritaha, Kumar Harita from Galvaha, Galvaha from Vidarbh Bhi Kondinya, Vibharg Kondinya from Vatsanapat, Bhavrav, Vatsanapati Bhavrav from Pathin Sobhar, Pathin Sobhar from Ayasya Angirasa, Ayasya Angirasa from Abhuti Tvashtraha, Abhuti Tvashtraha from Vishwarup Tvastra, Vishwarup Tvastra from the two Ashwins, the Ashwins from the Dichi Atharvan, the Dichi Atharvan from Atharvan Dev, Atharvan Dev from Mrityu Pravansanaha, Mrityu Pradhavansanaha from Pradhavansana, Pradhavansana from Ek Rishi, Ekarashi from Viprachiti, Viprachiti from Vyasati, Vyasati from Sanaru, Sanaru from Sanatan, Sanatan from Sangha, Sangha from Parmeshthin, Viraj, Parmeshthin from Brahm. Brahm is eternal. Salutation to Brahm. Okay, so it came from Brahma, all this knowledge. And then from the teacher to the disciple, it kept on going. And that's how all these names, somebody must have noted it down, the names of all these disciples and the teachers. So what do we learn from this? That all this knowledge comes from Brahm and Brahm alone. And that's why it's for everybody. You saw some names which are Asuri names, some Yaksh also. So this knowledge is not just for selected few people. Anybody and everybody who is qualified, who has respect for it, who controls the senses, and who wants to become better with this knowledge, should have this knowledge. This is not a property of a few people. This is what we learn from the list of these disciples and list of these names also. And this is the list of the teachers from the Madhu Kand actually. The first 4 chapters of these Brahmans. And we'll see more names in the 3rd and the 4th chapters according to the Kanav recension. So it is through the grace of these great masters that we have got these vidyas or meditations. So we'll see 2 more lists of teachers in the Yajnavalkya Kand and in the Khila Kand. These are the next 2 chapters. Brahm, we call Brahm supreme. We say it's eternal. We say it's self-born. See, we all have parents. Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh also we say they are from Brahma. But Brahma doesn't have any mother or a father. That's why Brahma is called Swambhu. And the Vedas are his form. That's why it's called Brahm Vidya. This secret self-knowledge is rooted in the eternal being. Whatever name we give the name, but it's an eternal being. So we saw the theory in the first 2 chapters in this Upanishad. And the essence of the 2 chapters is elaborated in the next 2 chapters also. Logical reasoning is given there in the Muni Kand or the Yajnavalkya Kand. That is the 3rd and the 4th chapter. So today we're going to start the 3rd chapter. First section of the 3rd chapter is called Ashwal Brahman. In order to expound the philosophy of sacrifice, sacrifice means the yajna, any action which we do, remembering God and for the benefit of others, that becomes a sacrifice. Because when we look at the English word sacrifice, it has a negative connotation. But when we understand what yajna is, it's all clear. So in this chapter, the philosophy of yajna or the sacrifice in the spiritual light and also meditations as their inner aspect is given. That's why it's called a Yajnavalkya Kand. This Kand is the third and the fourth chapter. Actually, the subject matter is the same as the previous Kand. And what was the subject matter? The Supreme Self, the Atma, Brahm. While the first Kand gave a lot of meditations, but in this Kand, we will see the logical argumentation. The performance of the yajnas as an aid to meditation, conducive to spiritual evolution of a person. And by realizing the correct import of these yajnas, a person learns that one is not a separate entity or a isolated creature. We are not separate from others. In fact, we are not even separate from God. That's why Lord Krishna, what did he say in Bhagavad Gita? Ansh of the Anshi, part of the whole. So we have to remember that we are identical with the God who is worshipped in the yajna, who is a manifestation of the Supreme Being. If sacrifices are performed with feeling, that means the bhav, faith, shraddha, devotion, love, and with the proper understanding of their secret, what really happens? Mind gets purified. The yajna should fill our entire being with sattva. After doing the yajna, if we feel separate than others, if we feel arrogant, better than others, that is not yajna. Yajna should make us pure, humble, feeling of oneness. So what is wanted is a right spirit, right mental attitude, and right will. That's why it's very important. The person who is doing the yajna also, even the Havan yajna, the fire ceremony, when we invite a priest to our home, we should look at it. We always check when we hire somebody, even to clean our house. We want to make sure the person is right. It is more important if when we get a priest in our house to do any kind of a sacrifice, any sacrament, is that person sattvic or not? In the food also, conduct also, thoughts also, living also. Is it just a business for that person? Or is that person connected with God or not? It's very important. So right spirit, right mental attitude, and right will. Sacrifices have got an inner meaning actually. Sacrifice symbolically stands for the annihilation of egoism. Because egoism is a big dirt for our mind. Egoism is the one which keeps us away from God. It's like a wall between us and God. Egoism is the wall between us and the people, sometimes we say love. Egoism. So a sacrifice symbolically stands for the annihilation of egoism. Lust also, greed also, and other demonical qualities. We have learned all kinds of demonical qualities in Bhagavad Gita. Lord Krishna gave us a list of those. Dev Asur Sampad Vibhag Yog, chapter 16. When we acquire divine qualities, the demonic qualities, they wash away. It's almost like when we wash a dirty glass or dirty water in a glass or a bottle, pour the clean water, the dirt washes away. And this is what happens when we do the yajna with the right attitude. And again, let me tell you, if you go back to Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna talks about 12 kinds of yajnas. Because we are familiar with the Havan yajna, the fire yajna, but there are 12 different kinds of yajnas. All day long, we are doing the yajna actually. If we understand a yogic way of living. Yogi is constantly doing yajna. Every word yogi speaks, every breath yogi takes, it's a yajna rupi. So if we make a general study of the yajnas, and there are a lot of yajnas in our scriptures, Ashwamedh yajna, Rajasuya yajna, Jyotish Homa yajna, we will not only get a clear idea about their philosophical richness and spiritual guidance, we will also get closer contact with the particular divinity to whom the offerings are made. It becomes very clear. What are we doing? Why are we doing? Because these yajnas aim to bring to the sacrificer as well as to the priests a correct conception of the Supreme Being in his divine and conceivable aspect, and without which, no matter how much meditation we do, it just proves very futile. So if we combine all this and meditate also, only then we reach to that highest level. So in other words, the sacrifice provides the material for higher contemplation. And meditation on the Supreme Being, of course, is where we started. Because meditation we do, especially in the beginning, only a few minutes sitting down. But other yajnas, we can do it walking around. So sacrifice in general has its own psychological bearing upon the human mind. Because it convinces our human intellect that truth is beyond the reach of the senses. That's why we close our eyes when we meditate. We close our ears. We don't want to hear any sound from outside. By transcending the sense activities and their effects, we can conceive the supersensual and supra-phenomenal. Because that's where we want to reach. Sometimes those deities come in our meditations, even while performing the rituals. Sometimes to test us, sometimes to bless us. They could be celestial gods, abstract gods, aerial gods, These divine beings are everywhere. They want to guide us, but we got to make sure that our intention is pure. Are we doing these yajnas or the meditations to gain something worldly and further fall down? Or are we doing it to reach to that ultimate goal, to become one with that Supreme? We got to see what our intention is. In our meditation, sometimes there are symbolic expressions. And it could be a glorious conception of divinity. And in addition to this, the all-around purity that the sacrifice demands on the part of the sacrificer and others also who are attending. Because when we do a group yajna, even the charity which is given, we got to understand the wider implication of the sacrifice. Because sometimes there could be imperfections, defects, and difficulties. But if our intentions are pure, if we understand the principle of sacrifice, every object in this entire creation, we can see the divinity in it. This is what this Rishi is trying to tell us. So the first section of this third chapter, known as Ashwal Brahman, will give us the meaning of the interrelation and the essential identity among the sacrificer, the priests engaged in the sacrifice, the sense organs, and the deity to whom the sacrifice is meant for. And it is mainly argumentative and accomplished by scriptural evidence and ultimate unity of the self, though. And we see in this section, this grand sacrifice is performed by King Janak, the king of Videha. He assembled the learned Brahmins of different countries. And there's a discussion between the Yagyavalkya and Ashwal. They are trying to establish the essential unity between the sacrificer and the divinity by the removal of the limitations of time and rites referred to pay the term death. The sacrificer should always bear in mind the spiritual significance of the four officiating priests, the four presiding deities, four factors in the human body, which is nothing but their essential identity. So this chapter is a rather, it's an average size actually, not very long, but a lot of information there. So basically this section gives us a number of meditations again, or you can call it a supplement to the meditations on prana mentioned in the Udgit Brahman. If you remember the Udgit, you remember that energy, the prana. So apart from this very interesting and instructive story of Janak's sacrifice And the debate which follows between the saints and the scholars, one side, those are scholars, and the other side, the sage Yagvalkya. So this section gives the spiritual aspirants 4 meditations which result in the transcendence of limitations caused by, number 1, accessories of sacrifice. Because in our sacrifices, we use the accessories. Sometimes we get confused about it, what to use, what not to use. The second is time in the form of a solar day and night caused by the rotation of the earth. And the third is the time manifesting as the dark and bright fortnights caused by movement of the moon. And fourth one is the attainment of the heavenly world. So in this section, we'll learn about these. So I'm just giving you a little summary of what is we are going to learn in this section. All the factors involved in a sacrifice are mortal. That means being subject to death. Death means to end. The sacrificer himself, the sacrifice, the various accessories used for it, the act of sacrifice, also the results that accrue from the sacrifice are perishable. And we all know they die one day or the other. But if the sacrifice is done properly, the sacrificer can free himself from death if he meditates on speech, fire, presiding deity of speech, and the priest, the hotra, as identical with himself. Because ultimately, this feeling of oneness has to come. If we keep on feeling separate from others, then we have not reached there. Same way, if we meditate on the identity of the eye, the organ of sight, as presiding deity, the sun, the Yajurveda priest, he would transcend the limitations of time caused by the solar days and night. So in other words, there's a way while doing these rituals to attain that oneness with all. So just like in the previous chapters, he's trying to take us towards that feeling of oneness. Do not limit yourself. Do not capture yourself in a box. So there are other meditations in this section. The 3 classes of Rig mantras, the introductory or preliminary, the intermediary, or eulogistically. There are so many different ways these mantras can be explained. But the result is the attainment of everything as one, bringing our attention to the one. So we will learn a lot of meditations again in this. But ultimately, performance of those meditations or even the sacrifices only we can do. Now you can understand why the daily sandhyas were so popular every day. Not just once a day, but twice. See, sandhya is twice. In the morning and in the evening. See, in the morning, from the dawn to the morning. In the evening, from dusk to the night, 2 times Sandhya. And they did the Agnihotars. Not just only in the ashrams, in every household it was being done. And when we do all that with the right attitude, slowly we can see that how we can rise above towards that ultimate goal of our life. Let's look at the very first mantra of this chapter. So chapter 3, and this is on page number 184. Om Jankoh Havadeho Baudakshinena Yagyanene Je Tatraha Kurup Chalalam Brahmana Abhisameta Babhuva Tasyehi Janakasye Vedasye Vijigyasa Babhuva Ka Svidesham Brahmananam Nuchanatam iti Sahagvam Sahasram Varurodha Dash Padaha Ekasyaha Ringyor Badha Babhubhu. Om Janaka, emperor of Videha, performed a sacrifice in which there was a profusion of gifts, because Dakshina has to be there. Brahmans from Kuru and Panchal were assembled there. A desire arose in the mind of Emperor Janak of Videha to know who was the most learned among those Brahmans. He had 1,000 cows confined in a place, and on the horns of each cow was attached gold weighing 10 pads. And in the footnote, it says a pad is a quarter of a pal, or about 1/3 of an ounce. Okay, so almost like a little more than 3.5 ounces of gold on each horn. So it was like a charity he was giving. So Janak, the king of Videha, performed a great sacrifice, and at the end of which he distributed profuse gifts to the learned Brahmans, because these charities are given to the people who do the yajnas. Actually, the name Janak, we remember Janak from the Treta Yuga. Janak, there have been many Janaks actually. Janak was, so he was a Janak also, but there have been many Janaks before him and many Janaks after him too. So the name Janak was something like a title accepted by the emperors in those Vedic days. It was a title. So that's why we get references to a number of Janaks in the scriptures. But they were all depicted as great knowers of Brahma. So the title was given to somebody who has achieved that state of level. So the Janak here referred to may perhaps be the first among them. Bahu Dakshina, occurring in this mantra, is the rite involving distribution of enormous charitable presentation at the termination of the sacrifice. At the end of the Ashwamedh Yagya also, Rajasuya Yagya also, that's what they say, that Bahu Dakshina. Okay, that means a lot of Dakshina. Bahu Dakshina. So it might be that Janak might have performed the great horse sacrifice, and at the successful termination of which he might have invited the learned Brahmins. and from the various parts of the country in order to perform this kind of a rite also. The Brahmins who were invited for the purpose mostly hailed from Kuru and Panchal, since these two kingdoms, they were famous for their large number of Vedic scholars. Because when you do a yajna like this, you want to make sure that a person who is performing the yajna knows what they're doing, and their character is good too. And Janak, he himself, even though he was king, but he was learned. I'm sure he had learned Brahmins in his country also, in his state also. So for this purpose, he set apart 1,000 cows as presentation to the one who proved himself as the most highly scholar among them. And each of the cows carried on its horn gold weighing 10 pads. Okay, 10 pads.
Equal to 3 ounces.
3 ounces? Yeah. Yeah, one pad is 1/3 of an ounce. So multiply that by 10. So that's how much gold. So it's a giving charity is part of that. So I think let's stop here because 11:17 already. So we'll start with the number 2 next week and see how this conversation, how the debate goes between the scholars at the end of these sacrifices, and learn something from there. See, ultimately, we have to learn also, not just only remember these things, but learn and bring it into our own life also. How can we clean ourselves? How can we increase our devotion? How can we become closer to our ultimate goal? And how do we really feel oneness with each other? Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Visheshyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much.